An interesting start to the year for gold, which has burst through $1,900 after lingering below those levels in the months leading up to the end of the year. But it did start to gather some upward momentum in the weeks leading into the end of the year with the softer dollar, a promising backdrop for the yellow metal. And as I say, at the start of the year, it has burst through those levels and quickly moved back towards the $1,950, $1,960 level. And that's where we've run into a little bit of resistance now. And this is where the key test really lies for gold. Now, this level coincides with previous areas of support and resistance, which is always notable, but it's also the 61.8% retracement of the entire move from the peaks that we hit, the all-time highs, back to those winter lows. So this is a really interesting test. A move above here suggests we've moved back into bullish territory. A rotation off these levels of significance means that this could be potentially viewed as a correction. I think at this point in time, I think I'm probably in the former camp. We may see some profit taken around this level, but I do think to see this tested, and I wouldn't be surprised if we are pushing back towards $2,000 at some point relatively soon, especially when you consider that the US dollar continues to look weak. Now, one potential bullish factor for the US dollar could have been that Senate runoff election, or those two Senate runoff elections in Georgia. The prospect of a double Democratic victory, splitting the Senate, giving the Vice President Kamala Harris the deciding vote, effectively giving the Democrats the lead in all three chambers, could have potentially been a bullish signal for the dollar. The reason, or the logic, being that it was perceived to be negative for stock markets. One of the reasons why we've seen some weakness in the opening stages of the year in these stock markets, and why even ahead of the open now we're seeing the NASDAQ in particular taking a bit of a hit, but the broader US market on the futures market looking a little bit softer as well. Also why we've seen the 10-year yield higher as well, above 1%. All of this driven by the prospect of more infrastructure spending, another stimulus bill, which would unlikely have got through the Senate if the Republicans retained their majority. So the prospect of much more stimulus lifting up these US yields, but also then the stock market downside coming from the potential for tax changes, which will still need more numbers, but the potential, or the increased potential for tax changes, but also the regulatory prospects as well, which is why I think the tech sector's getting hit a little bit harder than the rest. Now, this could have potentially been bullish for the US dollar, especially on the higher yield side, but we're not really seeing that materialize. In fact, the US dollar is off 0.25% so far this morning. So while the other moves in the stock markets and the treasury market has materialized, the dollar continues to look a little bit soft, and did yesterday also. So this is continued to support the yellow metal at this moment in time. As I say, we're hanging around those 1950, 1960 levels. If we can break above this level, then that could potentially see a run towards that $2,000 barrier, and overcoming this would then start to talk again about potential new record highs in gold. So a really interesting start to the year as far as the yellow metal is concerned. Still plenty more to come, and if the dollar continues to soften, then that should be supportive for the yellow metal, especially if it's going to be accompanied by a lot more spending from a Democrat controlled White House, but also Senate and House of Representatives as well. It is worth noting, of course, that we are in the late stages of the vote count here at this moment in time in Georgia. One seat has been declared, but there are going to be challenges. There is already a recount being posed in the other seat as well. So it looks as though the Democrats have secured both of Georgia, but that could change over the coming hours and days.